Hello Astrofam, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the full moon in Leo, coming up on the 5th of February at 16 degrees of Leo. To be more precise, 16 degrees 40 minutes of Leo. The full moon is going to happen at 6:28 p.m. GMT time, so you can adjust that for your own time zone. It's a tricky one. It is a tricky full moon. Why? And I know some folks are not going to be happy to hear this. Some folks are going to say, no, please, Rux, do not be negative. I'm not being negative. I am just reading the astrology. Why is it going to be a tricky full moon? Because Uranus, the planet of disruption, the great rebel, the great revolutionary, the planet of progress, but also Uranus is a very extreme influence, and Uranus likes to break free. Uranus is going to be squaring this full moon. So we're going to have in the sky an aspect pattern that is called a T-square. Uranus will square both the sun and the moon, and obviously because it's a full moon, the sun and the moon will be opposing each other. Surprises, disruption, breakups, crisis. Crisis in what sense? Crisis that is born out of rigidity. So something is cracking because structures that have been set in place have become all too rigid, and no one wants to compromise. No one wants to compromise. No one wants to meet the other person halfway. No one wants to give in an inch, I'd say. So in these types of situations, the tower crumbles. Can the crumbling of the tower be prevented? Possibly. Venus is going to sextile Uranus at the time of this full moon. So we're going to have a beautiful sextile from Venus exalted in Pisces to Uranus, the great disruptor and the apex of this T-square in the sky. So the catalyst, the mediator, and the focal point of this full moon. How can the crumbling of the tower be prevented? Well, I've got a few words for you. Surrender, forgiveness, thinking of those who are suffering, remembering to take into account other people's suffering and pain, not just ours. A certain softness is likely to help, but I don't know if softness is going to be found with a T-square in fixed signs, my lovelies. Now let's talk a little bit about the symbolism of the full moon. The full moon is a time of completion, of culmination, of things coming to a peak, to a close. It is also a time of release, of letting go, of things coming to an end. Of course, that's what letting go is about. At a collective level, we may be faced with possibly turbulences from an economic perspective. There could be disruptive news connected with the economy. There could be disruptive news connected with how technology impacts economy. Of course, we might also notice disruption of the flow of tangible resources, such as, I don't know, for instance, food, let's say, because we are talking here about a Uranus and Taurus is concerned with natural resources, so there could be disruption on that front. What I'm also seeing is almost like a face-off, an opposition between the elite and the common folk. I dare say that the elite might have to give an inch. And I realize I'm talking in metaphors and symbols, but that's the nature of astrology. Astrology does not predict exact material manifestation. It is only archetypally and symbolically predictive. So it will be interesting to watch, to see how those in power, how the elites are being forced to give in maybe one significant inch, I dare say. Why do I believe that the common folk is likely to come out on top this time? Because the sun, which is the dispositor of this full moon, because the moon is in Leo, the sun is placed in Aquarius and Saturn is also placed in Aquarius. So Saturn is kind of like strengthening the sun at this time because it is in domicile, I would say. So we have a very, very strong Saturn. There could also be earthquakes around this time, very possibly. I mean, when Uranus in Taurus is forming tense aspects, I wouldn't be surprised if stampedes or earthquakes of some sorts, not just natural, but also kind of like people kind of like coming together and something like a structure like shaking and falling apart. I would be careful around this time, around the 5th of February. When I find myself in large crowds, I would be careful. Let's say, of course, we don't know exactly how things are going to play out, but I would be careful if there is some sort of like an emergency. I would just like dart for the closest exit point and be careful that like people don't like shove and push and pull, and there is kind of like this stampede type of scenario. I dare say. Are there any signs who are going to find maybe this full moon a little bit easier on them than others? Yes, probably. I'm thinking in particular here of, let's see, of the likes of Libras, Geminis, Sagittarius, Aries. You might find this full moon a little bit like, yeah, you're seeing the drama, but maybe the drama isn't exactly hitting you, slapping you in the face. You might be seeing it around you. And even if there are things that are falling apart, that are crumbling, structures that are crumbling, you could feel freer and liberated, I dare say. So freedom and liberation and a rigid structure that needs to be altered seems to be the theme of this full moon. Yes, we may also find ourselves quite frustrated at a collective level at the time of this full moon, because it may feel like our individual kind of like gifts and maybe wants and needs and desires aren't necessarily paid attention to, and it's all about the collective. It's all about what's right for the group. It's all about what's right for I don't know, like our peers or the organizations that we are a part of. So that could lead to quite a bit of frustration, I dare say. Remember, a little bit of softness goes a long way at the time of this full moon. A little bit of softness, a little bit of breathing, a little bit of listening to calming music, soothing music, maybe a little bit of meditation. Venus in Pisces, right? Am I right? Venus in Pisces loves a little bit of meditation and kind of like tending to spiritual matters. That might take us a very, very, very long way in what could otherwise feel like a very stressful situation. Let's face it, sometimes life is stressful. Now let's talk about the update for each of the 12 zodiac signs. Oh, and before we do that, folks, please remember, look back at what was going on in your life around the end of July 2022, around the 20th of July, maybe a few days before, a few days after, because that's when we experienced the new moon in Leo, and this full moon might be reflecting back themes that came to your attention at the end of July 2022. Please remember also to listen to the update for your rising sign, for your ascendant. If you do not know what your rising sign is, then I do strongly recommend that you find out your time of birth and calculate it online. It's free. And remember that if you want to work with me, I do one-to-one astrological consultations. I work with clients one-to-one. If you would like me to interpret your natal chart, to look at the year ahead together, so that you can be best prepared for opportunities, for challenges, so that you can make the most on a personal level, because we're looking at your entire natal chart, so that you can be best prepared for the year ahead. You can find me on writteninthestars-astrology.com. That is my website. My dear Aries suns and Aries risings, what does this full moon bring about for you? So 5th of February, 3 days before, 3 days after, this full moon is activating your 5th house, 11th house axis. I do believe that this could be a very fun time. I'm just going to put it out there. You could be going out, you could be social, you could be attending events, parties, you could be having overall a really good time, I wanna say, but there's a catch. You might end up spending more on fun, on catching up with friends, on yeah, just enjoyment. You might end up spending more than you intended to, and you might find yourself in a little bit of a pickle, I wanna say. Another possibility, if you're going out, if you're having fun, if you're attending, I don't know, like a dinner party or anything like that, keep an eye on your wallet, keep an eye on your credit card, keep an eye on your cards and on your possessions, not just your cards, maybe even your phone, I dare say. You could find yourself having to deal with, I don't know, like an unexpected expense around this time, my lovely Aries, connected with your passions, your hobbies, connected with having too much fun, connected with partying, also connected with children. That's certainly a possibility, I dare say. You could also end up paying for maybe more people than you wanted to pay, especially if you're going out. My recommendation would be to not break the bank, because again, there's probably going to be some sort of like expense that you have to deal with, and at the end of the day, you might ask yourself, was it all worth it? Was it all worth it to, I don't know, like to show off and to buy everyone drinks, and at the end of the night realize that you've gone into your overdraft and I don't know. you have the bank to pay back. A little bit of caution, I dare say. This could also be a time, by the way, when you have an epiphany and you decide that you may no longer want to hang out with a certain group of people because they are no longer aligned with your values, lovely Aries. Now, if you're a Taurus sun or a Taurus rising, my dear Taurians, 3 days before, 3 days after the 5th of February, so pay attention to the entire period. This full moon is activating your axis of home, living situation, and the axis of your public life, career, professional path. I do believe that around this time, you may do one of the following. You might find out that you have to relocate for your job. You might also, I want to say symbolically, metaphorically, break up either with your current home, or there could be a massive clash based on differing values with a family member, especially a parent. Something technological could also crack around the house, so you might need to fix it. You might also have an epiphany around this time, and you might even decide to act upon it, that you no longer want to work for this company or in this industry or for this boss because you are not achieving that work-life balance that you would like to achieve. Before you act very rashly, because you could act very kind of like abruptly around this time, you could be the one that says, bah, no more, I am breaking free, I am cutting you all out of my life. It might be worth checking in, possibly maybe with like a friend or with someone who is a little bit more kind of like removed from the situation, and ask them, how would you react in this situation, or how would you best handle maybe how should I say, a little bit more diplomatically, because you're not in a diplomatic mood around this time. On the contrary, you're in a very kind of like extreme, I want to cut myself loose mood around this time, Taurians. I would check in with a friend and say, am I overreacting? Is this too much? Obviously you don't have to, but you could find their advice quite helpful, I want to say. Also look back at what was happening in your home and living situation around the end of July, my dear Taurians, because you could be experiencing a close or a culminating point connected with that at the time of this full moon. Now, if you are a Gemini sun or a Gemini rising, my lovely Geminis, this full moon is activating your axis of learning, 5th of February. Have a think about what you were studying, what you were learning, what you were preparing for, or maybe what you are writing around the end of July of 2022, because this full moon might bring things to a close. You could hand in an exam, you could hand in a paper, you might be taken a little bit by surprise by an exam. It's possible, maybe by the result that you're receiving, or maybe if you are, I don't know, like if you have to attend in person an exam, like the requirements, the tasks could be partially something that you did not see coming. I still feel like you can find a way around it. You can find a way to improvise. The other possibility, my lovely Geminis, around this time is, I'll put it out there, especially for Gemini risings, something could be in need of repair when it comes to your car. And on the road, I would be careful not to rush. I would be careful not to try to get like really fast somewhere, because that can also result in unpleasant, unforeseen events or incidents on the road. I dare say. Careful what you say around this time, Geminis, because I have a feeling that if you don't think long term, and if you're talking to someone who has power, it could backfire later, or they could have like a very surprising reaction, I'd say. And last but not least, if you have siblings, Geminis, there could be some surprising, but maybe not necessarily very pleasant, or some uncomfortable news making its way to you from your siblings. Maybe they decided to leave behind their job, and now they're like, oh, can you help me? Can you, I need to stay with you for some time. Can you help me with like rent and stuff like that? That is a possibility, Geminis. My lovely Cancerians, Cancer suns and Cancer risings, like yours truly here, fellow Cancerian here. 5th of February, this full moon, 3 days before, 3 days after, is activating your financial axis. I feel like you've got a lot to pay around this time, my dear Cancerians, and I think there's no other way around it. I feel like there's no way to go about it. There's no way to avoid it. There could also be some unexpected, unforeseen, like tax or increase in taxes, or an increase if you've got credit cards, like the credit card rate could go up all of a sudden, and you're like, no, that messes with my budget. I would be mentally prepared for some kind of like adjustments that need to be done to your budget. Especially, you may need to adjust your budget when it comes to social events, when it comes to maybe your contribution to a committee, to an organization, when it comes to keeping up with some of your friends. I wanna say, this could also be a time, let's see, when you might need to pay for something that, I don't know if you forgot about it or it just kind of like escaped your attention. Something connected with maybe like your health or your physical body, or something that you bought for yourself, even like, like clothes or stuff like that. And maybe, you took it out in installments, and now it's coming back at you, and you're like, oh, wow, I forgot, I need to take care of this. So that's kind of like what I'm seeing. There is a possibility that someone can come in and help you. If you do need some help of a financial nature, it could be a friend, it could be a partner. You could ask maybe for a little bit of like leniency. If you can't make the payment on time, you're probably gonna get it. But yeah, the money aspect is like front and center. Also, if you are in a partnership, you might decide, especially a business partnership, you might decide to cut your partner loose. You might decide to end the partnership because you don't see eye to eye in terms of future goals. So that's a possibility. If you are a Leo sun and Leo rising, my lovely Leos, this full moon is putting the spotlight on you, and it's activating your relationship sector. It's activating your 10th house of career and public status. I feel like some Leos are going to break away from a business partnership that is no longer working. You may no longer see eye to eye with the boss. You may feel like this is it. It's kind of like the final straw. I need to cut myself loose from this rigid and untenable situation in a professional setup. There's also a possibility, if you are in a relationship, that your partner could experience some emergency connected with their parents, connected with a parent in particular. They could experience some sort of like emergency at home. You might also have to make an announcement to the outside world if you have broken up with a partner, personal or business-wise. You might need to announce to the outside world, listen, I'm no longer with this person, or I'm no longer doing business with this person, and you could feel a little bit tense and stressed. You may want to bring, I don't know, on your side, maybe someone who can advocate for you, or someone who can kind of like embolden you to do this, to take this step in the public sphere, even if you are a little bit, you're very kind of like, I want to say, like, anxious as to how the news is going to be received. A sibling could help, a colleague could help, maybe also someone like a therapist could help. If you're looking to break free from a business partnership, you might want to check in with your accountant first, so that you don't do anything rash, so that you kind of like proceed cautiously and you end up in a good position at the end of this financially. Now, if you are a Virgo sun or a Virgo rising, my lovely Virgos, this full moon is activating your axis of service and health, 5th of February, 3 days before, 3 days after. Look back at what was going on for you from a mental health perspective, and maybe from a feeling kind of like isolated or having the need to retreat from the world around the end of July, because similar themes could come up to your attention around this time, around the time of this full moon. I do feel like some Virgos may experience some sort of like mental health stress around this time. If that happens, then my big recommendation would be to either like ask for help or look at the set of beliefs, look at your life philosophy, look at the beliefs that are holding you back from giving yourself permission to let go and to surrender and just kind of like relax and not put so much stress on yourself. Do your beliefs need to change? Probably. Do some limiting beliefs need to be acknowledged and broken free from? Probably. On a more kind of like tangible level, some of you might decide to leave your job. Some of you might experience disruption in terms of traveling for work. That's a possibility. Some of you might experience health disruption, but in a way, if you do experience anything physically, my recommendation is to look very closely at what the symbolic meaning of this is. Have you been pushing yourselves too hard? Have you been not getting rest? Do you need to change your approach to work in general, your philosophy and your mentality around work? The answer is probably yes, but I'm going to leave the details to you, my lovely Virgos. Ask for help from your partner. Your partner is here to support you. If you don't have a partner, someone who is like a therapist or someone who's gone through similar issues that you have gone through. And if you do experience any disruption connected with work, or with traveling, it feels like there's someone already in your life that can help smooth the process, that can help solve the issue. So maybe the crisis isn't as big or as big a deal as you initially thought it would be, even though from a mental health perspective, it might feel like a big deal. I'll just put it out there. Libras, Libra suns and Libra risings. This full moon is activating your friendship sector and your sector of fun and enjoyment. I do feel like you're gonna have quite a bit of fun around the time of this full moon, but you might you might go a little bit overboard. You might overspend. You might end up, I don't know, maybe having an argument with a romantic partner because you are putting way too much emphasis on maybe your circle of friends, and maybe your romantic partner feels neglected. This could also be a time when you decide to take away, if you've got kids, to take your children or one of your kids away from, how should we call it, from a group setup, because it is no longer something that is contributing to growth. I wanna say it may feel like your child is experiencing some sort of crisis in this group type of setup. So what's the point in keeping them there? You might need to kind of like opt for like a clear, kind of like cut a clear break. There is a possibility that some Libras might also be faced with some fears around this time, connected with the topic of having children, and maybe also connected with the topic of intimacy. If you do have any fears of this type, ask yourselves, is this something that can be worked through? Because you might not need to like cut yourselves like loose out of this situation for fear of like opening up. You might just need to like put some effort and change some habits. And that is Libra. My dear Scorpios, Scorpio suns and Scorpio risings. This full moon activates your 10th house of career and your 4th house of home. Some Scorpios, I'll put it out there, you might experience massive disruption at work, and as a result, you might decide to leave behind a job. You might decide to walk away from a position. You might decide to walk away from a role. There's also a possibility that maybe a boss leaves and you are taken completely by surprise. You're in shock. You're like, okay, where does that leave me? We've been working together. We've been doing such a good kind of like job together. What do I do from now on? I do believe you're going to be in a good place to collaborate with other people if that's the case, if that happens. You might also need to make some sort of announcement in the public sphere as to what's been happening in your relationship sector. That's certainly a possibility. Maybe something that you know is going to be shocking for others. I'll just put it out there. There could be some sort of like crisis at home, not just maybe in your home, in your partner's home. So maybe like a parent of your partner, so like an in-law, loses their job or retires or experiencing some sort of like massive disruption in their life. I wanna say it could be something that needs a long-term solution rather than a short-term solution. This could also be a time when you have maybe a bit of a face-off with a partner as to what you want to do next career-wise. Maybe you've got some plans career-wise and your partner is saying, no, but what about our plans to have kids? Or what about our plans to like move to this location? Remember, softness goes a long way, and reminding your partner that you love them is probably also going to take you a very, very, very long way, Scorpios. If you're a Sagittarius sun or a Sagittarius rising, this full moon is activating your axis of traveling, my lovely Sagittarians. I do think there might be some disruption traveling-wise. You might need to postpone a trip, or you might need to adjust to the kind of like the timings of the trip if you need to like fly around this time. So especially when it comes to vacation or long distance travel, I would recommend getting health insurance, not because you are gonna need it, but because it might be a requirement, I don't know, like in the country that you travel to. So better safe than sorry, I dare say. There's also a possibility that you might need to put in some extra work, and you could be taken by surprise by the news of this. You might need to put in some extra work when it comes to a legal matter or when it comes to a matter connected with something like visas, maybe an academic thesis or something along those lines. I would be careful around this time not to be overly rigid on your way of seeing things, not to be overly rigid on pressing your agenda, because that can literally lead to some sort of a gridlock at work or when it comes to an educational matter. Remember, sometimes a little bit of like compromise, a little bit of softness, a little bit of like surrendering goes a long way, and it might be in your best interest long term. Just putting it out there. Capricorns, Capricorn suns, and Capricorn risings. What does this full moon look like for you? Well, this full moon is activating your financial axis, and especially your 8th house of shared assets, shared resources, investments. I do feel like this could be a time when there's a sense of wanting to break free from some restrictions that are imposed upon you financially by others. So you could be feeling a little bit stressed about debts, credits, stuff like that. I would not, but again, you are free to do whatever you please with your money. This is not financial advice. I would not, if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't invest necessarily around this time, because some things could be too good to be true. And there could be kind of like very high fluctuations, very high volatility on the market. There could also be some, I don't know, like sudden piece of news connected with you having to pay some extra tax or something like that. Your partner might experience some disruption. If you do have a partner, they might experience some disruption financially. And of course, if you're a couple, you might need to both figure out how this is going to work out. There could also be a sudden expense connected with children that is coming up around this time, or connected with, or an extra expense connected with something that was done for pleasure. So I don't know, let's say you bought, I don't know, like a holiday package, and then you realize that you didn't pay VAT for it or something like that. And now the invoice is coming in and you're like, oh, wow, this is shocking. I did not expect this. Don't take my money. Something along those lines. From a psychological perspective, Capricorns, around this time, I do feel like you're going to be faced with some fears, especially fears and blockages connected with romance, which is why you might look to break free from a romantic situation that just feels a little bit too much. Ask yourselves, can this be talked out? Probably it can. I would not necessarily go immediately. I wouldn't necessarily resort to immediately kind of like cutting ties, although that might be the first kind of like visible solution, I'd say. If you're an Aquarius sun or an Aquarius rising, this full moon is activating your 7th house of relationships, Aquarians. And let's put it this way. There seems to be some sort of crisis in your relationship sector, connected with family matters, maybe connected with home, real estate, living situation. I don't think you're seeing eye to eye with a partner. I do feel like maybe you're looking at your partner and you're saying to them, listen, this is unreasonable, but they're not seeing that. They're hearing, oh, you don't feel like what I want is important enough. Remind them that their needs are valid, what they want is valid, and they are important to you, because they might not be feeling very important to you around this time. They might be feeling like you're being overly rigid and overly focused on what matters to you. This could also be a time when you may, together with a partner, need to move out of a house or reconsider your living situation because of some sort of sudden disruption. I wanna say it could be some sudden disruption connected with family. It could be connected with your work or your partner's work. That's certainly a possibility. There could also be some sort of, for either one of your parents or your partner's parents, a health-related issue that needs to be addressed straight away. It does look like, however, even though it's very sudden and unexpected, it does look like money can solve the problem. So I wouldn't freak out too much around this time, my dear Aquarians. And there could be some Aquarians that break free from a partnership around this time. I'll put it out there. It could be because you're just not seeing eye to eye in terms of how your living situation, your home life, and your family life should look like. There's kind of like a significant discrepancy in terms of values. And it could be connected with stuff that you've discussed or that was on your radar, maybe as a couple, at the end of July. Now, it's not mandatory. Remember that the stars, the planets, they don't force us to do anything. But I do see crisis. I definitely see crisis. I do see a state of like radical kind of like shock and disruption. Things can be talked through, I feel. But also, I feel like everyone involved in the situation is very stubborn. So go figure. If you are a Pisces sun or a Pisces rising, this full moon, my lovely Pisces, is activating your 6th house of work. I'm going to put it out there. Some of you might decide, this is it, enough is enough, I am done with this job. Crisis at work can happen. Now, the question to ask yourselves around this time, Pisces, is, am I being too rigid? Am I being unreasonable? Am I not being aware of my blind spots? Possibly. You could be unaware of some of your blind spots. You could be trying to force a little bit your agenda onto colleagues, onto your kind of like team, and that is likely to lead to significant crisis and maybe someone kind of like accusing you of something or lashing out at you. My big recommendation, because you've got Venus in your 1st house at the time, is to keep your calm, your composure, and your sweetness, and to step into a place of forgiveness and say, okay, I'm sorry if you're hurting and I didn't notice this, or I'm sorry if this triggered you, or I'm sorry if you took this the wrong way. If you do decide to leave a job around this time, lovely Pisces, it's probably going to be because you realize that you value yourselves more than the stress that this job is causing, which is very much a possibility. Some Pisces might experience maybe some disruption in terms of getting into work, some disruption on the road. If that happens, I would not freak out. I would remember that you can sweet talk your way through this, which is probably the way that you might be able to solve the situation if you don't get to a meeting in time or something like that. I would be careful to also not over like burden myself physically around this time, because you don't want your body to crack because you're just putting too much weight upon your shoulders in terms of stress connected with your work. Remember that your health comes first. Just putting it out there. Just putting it out there. Health does come first. Without health, we are incapable of doing anything else. I hope, folks, that this has been a useful forecast. And do remember, astrology is only archetypally predictive. It doesn't predict exact material manifestation. So please don't freak out and say, oh, this is going to happen for sure. Remember to take the symbolic energy out of this forecast. And also remember that sometimes we can remediate, we can ease, we can soothe, we can maybe help these types of like stressful configurations in the sky by doing something that feels completely kind of like unexpected and out of character. So ask yourselves, what would the autopilot me do in this situation, and how can I surprise myself? And I do feel like surprising you through your reactions at this full moon is likely to help the whole situation, just because it is a very nice way to channel Uranus, which is the catalyst, the apex, the focal point of this full moon. So really think of an out of the box, kind of like an original and unconventional reaction that you might have to a stressful, rigid situation. And as I said, sweetness sometimes goes a very, very long way. Letting go and knowing what battles to fight, choosing your battles carefully is probably good advice as well. Last but not least, if you want to work with me, remember that you can find me on my website, which is written in the stars-astrology.com. If you're an existing client, you can go ahead and purchase the year ahead forecast or the 30 minutes follow-up consultation with me. Or if you're a new client, you will first have to book the 1-hour live Zoom consultation with me, which is fantastic for me analyzing your natal chart or discussing about specific topics in your chart, such as relationships, career, or looking at the year ahead, kind of like understanding what you're dealing with and how you can best utilize the energies of the year ahead. We can also look at astrocartography, at compatibility. So the 1-hour consultation is completely customizable to your needs. And I am also on Instagram, folks, at RuxUnbelievable. That is my Instagram handle. It was a pleasure. I hope to see you next time. Thank you. Bye.